Colonel Potter, sir, my last wish is to be buried in my mother's wedding gown.
I've seen these Dodgers for 40 years, all the tricks. Dismissed!
Imagine American television without MASH. Tough, right? That's because the show wasn't just popular. It reshaped what a sitcom could be. Premiering in 1972, during the final years of the Vietnam War, MASH was set in the Korean War and blended humor with heartbreak. Its quirky characters explored the absurdity of war and the resilience of the human spirit. It quickly became a fan favorite. But behind the scenes, the show was constantly evolving. As it dove deeper into social commentary and complex character arcs, tensions sometimes rose. Several beloved stars eventually made the difficult choice to leave. Were their exits personal, professional, or due to creative conflicts? The reasons may surprise you. Let's take a closer look at what really happened. History of MASH. A war story told with heart. Like many great TV series, the story of MASH didn't begin on television, but in a book. In 1968, Dr. Richard Hooker, the pen name of Korean war surgeon H. Richard Hornberger, published MASH, a novel about 3 army doctors. The fictionalized account of his time in a mobile army surgical hospital mixed gallows humor with moments of warmth and bitter reality. The book became a bestseller, catching Hollywood's attention. 2 years later, Robert Altman adapted the novel into the 1970 film MASH, a satirical black comedy starring Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye Pierce and Elliot Gould as Trapper John. The film was irreverent, sobering, and timely, resonating as the Vietnam War loomed large. It became both a critical and commercial success, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes and the Academy Award for Best Screenplay. But the real cultural explosion came when CBS adapted it into a weekly television series. Developed by Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, the TV version debuted on September 17, 1972. While it kept the wartime setting and offbeat humor, the show embraced a more serialized, character-driven style that allowed for deeper emotional storytelling. Alan Alda stepped into the role of Hawkeye Pierce and quickly became the heart of the series. The first season struggled so much with ratings that it was nearly canceled, but CBS moved it to Saturday nights, and ratings soared. With this move, so did the show's cultural impact. MASH broke rules left and right. It experimented with format, sometimes used real war footage, and was one of the first American comedies to replace a laugh track with ambient sounds like helicopters. Alan Alda became not just its star, but a driving creative force, pushing for realism and emotional depth. But as MASH matured, not all the actors agreed with the new direction. Some felt their roles were shrinking or becoming caricatures. Others struggled with personal challenges or longed to pursue different creative paths. Over its 11-season run, MASH saw numerous cast changes. Yet through it all, the show remained true to its mission, to reveal the human cost of war with compassion, wit, and unbreakable bonds. This brings us to the first major and shocking exit, the departure of McLean Stevenson, whose character's fate stunned the nation. McLean Stevenson, a departure that changed TV forever. If you ask longtime MASH fans what moment hit them the hardest, most will point to the Season 3 finale, Abyssinia Henry. In one unforgettable line delivered by radar, the entire country was shaken. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. McLean Stevenson had been central to the show from the beginning. As the often befuddled but well-meaning commanding officer of the 4077th, his character, Colonel Henry Blake, was the perfect counterbalance to Hawkeye and Trapper. He brought humanity, warmth, and a touch of frazzled charm. His performance earned him widespread praise and even a Golden Globe. Fans loved him. But behind the scenes, Stevenson felt frustrated. As the show shifted toward Alan Alda's Hawkeye as the main emotional anchor, McLean began to feel sidelined. He even told People magazine in 1975, I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show. It wasn't just ego. He believed he had the charisma and talent to lead a show of his own. He didn't want to be stuck in a secondary role. By the end of season 3, Stevenson made the decision not to return. Traditionally, sitcom characters were written off gently, transferred, reassigned, or married off. But MASH wasn't a traditional sitcom. Its creator seized the chance to remind viewers that this was a war story. And in war, not everyone makes it home. The result was Abyssinia Henry, an episode that began as a celebration of Henry Blake's discharge and return home, but ended with a devastating gut punch. Radar's somber announcement in the operating room. Delivered with no music, no laugh track, just stunned silence, made television history. For the first time, a beloved sitcom character was killed off, permanently and without warning. The cast's shocked reactions were partly real. Only a few knew the ending beforehand. Alan Alda later revealed that Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, was one of the only actors informed in advance. That moment forever changed television storytelling, proving that sitcoms could be more than escapism. They could carry the weight of reality, grief, and consequence. In advance, Gary Berghoff, Radar, was the only one told about the shocking ending so he could prepare. The rest of the cast was reacting genuinely in that final take. As soon as the episode aired, it generated an immediate and intense response. CBS received thousands of letters, many praising the show's honesty, while others were furious that such a beloved character was taken away so suddenly. Some even accused the producers of going too far. But co-creator Larry Gelbart defended the decision, saying, "We wanted to say that not everybody gets to go home," and that they did. But what happened to McLean Stevenson after his departure? Let's just say things weren't as rosy as he probably imagined. At first, it seemed promising. He signed a lucrative deal with NBC, eager to strike out on his own, and soon starred in The McLean Stevenson Show, a family sitcom built around his affable charm. For a while, it looked like he was charting his own path. But the success was short-lived. The show was canceled after just one season, and his next project, Hello, Larry, fared even worse. Despite heavy promotion, it was critically panned and became a running joke in later years. In retrospect, McLean admitted to regretting his decision. In a 1983 interview with the Los Angeles Times, he confessed, "I took myself out of the game." It wasn't just that his shows flopped. It was the realization that MASH had been a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The writing, the cast, the impact. It was lightning in a bottle. Some of his co-stars, like Alan Alda and Loretta Sweet, expressed sadness about his departure, but understood his desire to branch out. Others quietly wondered if he had walked away too quickly from something truly special. Despite his regrets, McLean continued working in television and made occasional guest appearances. But he never found the same level of success or emotional connection with audiences as he had playing Henry Blake. When he passed away in 1996 at the age of 68, tributes poured in from fans and colleagues alike. Alda remembered him as a wonderful actor and a good man, while Berghoff called him a light-hearted spirit who brought joy to everyone around him. In many ways, McLean's departure gave the show its soul. Ironically, the role he left behind became the most enduring of his career. But if McLean's departure shook fans, Wayne Rogers' exit was something else entirely. Quiet, complicated, and full of behind-the-scenes drama. Unlike McLean, who received a farewell episode and a heartbreaking send-off, Wayne simply disappeared. One moment he was there, and the next, he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, and certainly no closure. To understand why, we need to go back to the beginning. Wayne Rogers played Trapper John McIntyre, one half of the iconic comedic duo with Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. Their chemistry defined the early seasons, their witty banter and rebellious antics making them the heart of the 4077th. It was like a wartime version of The Odd Couple, filled with mischief and scalpel jokes. But behind the laughs, tension was brewing. Wayne had signed on believing MASH would be a true ensemble series, with equal screen time for the main cast. But as the show evolved, more and more of the spotlight shifted to Alda's Hawkeye. He wasn't just a co-lead anymore. He was the moral center, the emotional anchor, and soon the creative force behind the series. Initially, Wayne didn't resent Alda's rise. Off-screen they were friendly, but over time he began to feel sidelined. As he later explained, Trapper didn't have much to do. He was one of two buddies, and then he became the guy who nodded at everything Alan said. Frustrated with the direction of his character, Wayne quietly decided not to renew his contract after season 3. In fact, his contract had never even been formally signed. He had been working on a handshake deal. This meant when the producers threatened to sue him for breach of contract, they had no legal footing. He hadn't broken anything. He had simply walked away from a show he no longer believed in. His sudden departure left the writers scrambling. Season 4 opened with a quick explanation that Trapper John had been discharged while Hawkeye was on leave. For fans, it was jarring. First Henry, now Trapper? And without a farewell? The audience reaction was harsh. But in Trapper's place came Mike Farrell as B.J. Honeycutt, a more grounded, emotionally layered character who shifted the tone of the show towards something deeper and more introspective. Ironically, MASH grew stronger in Trapper's absence, though debates still rage among fans over whether the early seasons or later ones were superior. Wayne, meanwhile, didn't disappear. He continued acting but eventually reinvented himself entirely, becoming a successful financial investor and commentator. A Princeton history graduate, Wayne had a brilliant mind for economics, and by the 1990s, was a regular panelist on Fox News' Cashin' In Makin' G Millions on Wall Street. Though he never reached the same level of fame in acting, Wayne looked back on his time in MASH fondly. Alan Alda himself once said, "Wayne is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. I missed him a lot when he left." Their friendship endured, and when Wayne passed away in 2015 at the age of 82, Alda tweeted, "He was smart, funny, curious, and dedicated. We made a pact to give each other a hard time for the rest of our lives, and I'm sorry we won't have the chance." Although Wayne left MASH at the height of its popularity without fanfare or applause, fans continue to remember Trapper's playful grin, mischievous humor, and easygoing charm. We've been talking about actors who left MASH to pursue other paths. But what about those who left because the series was simply too emotionally challenging? Take Gary Berghoff, for example. It's ironic, considering he was the heart of the team. But Gary didn't leave MASH with fanfare or celebration. He left quietly, painfully, and for reasons far deeper than most people ever realized. To fans, Gary was Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed company clerk with uncanny intuition, a teddy bear under one arm and the war under the other. Radar could hear helicopters before anyone else. He had a sweet, almost childlike innocence that softened the harshness of the battlefield. While Hawkeye and Trapper broke rules, and Henry Blake fumbled through leadership, Radar was the glue, the soul, and some might even say, the emotional heartbeat of the 4077th. But behind that soft voice and nervous smile was an actor slowly unraveling under the weight of it all. Gary was the only actor to reprise his role from the original 1970 MASH film. In doing so, he brought a vulnerability to Radar that hadn't existed in the movie. There, the character was more mischievous, even a little sleazy. But on TV, Gary shaped Radar into something unforgettable, a symbol of lost innocence during wartime. His performance was so iconic that many considered him irreplaceable. And yet, by season 7, cracks began to show. Gary was struggling, both personally and professionally. The grueling production schedule of MASH, combined with his own perfectionism, began to wear him down. He battled anxiety and depression, issues that rarely made headlines at the time, but deeply affected his ability to cope with filming. On top of that, there was the pain of being away from his family. By the late 70s, Gary was married and had a young daughter, but the long hours on set meant he was constantly away from home. He later admitted that missing his daughter's early years was a mistake I never stopped regretting. In a 2018 interview, co-star Mike Farrell recalled, "Gary had emotional problems. He always felt that he wasn't getting the attention or appreciation he deserved, but I think he underestimated how much we all respected him." There were also contractual disputes. Gary wanted better pay, more flexibility, and less screen time so he could manage his personal life. The producers, aware of how central Radar was, tried to accommodate him by giving him more time off and fewer appearances each season, but it wasn't enough. Emotionally, he was done. So in season 8, he made the painful decision to leave MASH for good. Unlike Wayne Rogers, however, the show didn't let him slip away quietly. Radar received a 2-part farewell episode titled Goodbye Radar, one of the most heart-wrenching storylines in the series. In it, Radar returns from leave to find the 4077th falling apart without him. At first, he tries to fix everything, but eventually realizes it's time to move on. His mother needs him at home, his community farm is in trouble, and perhaps Radar has finally grown up. The final scene is nearly silent. Radar walking away, silhouetted against the Korean sky, his teddy bear left behind on Hawkeye's bunk. That moment was as emotional as it was touching, and it said everything the show couldn't put into words. Watching him leave felt like saying goodbye to our own innocence. After MASH, Gary took a long break from acting. He made a few appearances, including a short-lived spin-off called Walter, in which Radar became a rookie cop, but it never took off. Eventually, Gary stepped away from Hollywood altogether, devoting himself to painting, wildlife conservation, and even inventing. He held several patents, including one for a fishing tackle system. Nature became his refuge, a way to heal from the pressures of fame and the emotional toll MASH had taken on him. He later explained that he left for 2 reasons, my family and burnout. I wanted to pick up the pieces of my life. Today, Gary lives quietly. He rarely gives interviews or seeks the spotlight, but every so often fans spot him at conventions and remember the kid with the soft heart and big ears who could hear CE hoppers before anyone else. Now let's move on to the man who played one of TV's most hilarious villains, Larry Linville. It's hard to imagine early MASH without Frank Burns, the rigid, petty, and hopelessly self-important character. Played to perfection by Linville, Major Burns was the character audiences loved to hate. His sycophantic obsession with rules, his secret affair with Major Houlihan, and his deep inferiority complex made him the perfect comic foil to Hawkeye and Trapper. But as the show matured, Frank's one-note villainy began to stand out, and not in a good way. While other characters deepened, Frank remained stuck. His insecurities never evolved, and his prejudices were never challenged. By the end of season 5, Larry decided he had taken Frank as far as he could. He wasn't fired, and he wasn't pushed. He simply chose not to renew his contract. His departure had a huge ripple effect. Without Frank, the show was free to explore deeper moral conflicts. The comedy no longer needed a cartoon villain. It could come from irony and humanity instead. In many ways, Linville's exit marked a creative crossroads that helped MASH grow from good to legendary. Still, fans felt his absence. For 5 seasons, Frank had been both the punchline and the pressure. Though his exit was written off with an off-screen promotion, his loss was deeply felt in the show's DNA. Linville went on to do guest roles in TV and film, but he never found another part as visible, or as unforgettable, as Frank Burns. Of course, when one character leaves, another often enters. In season 6, Frank's departure made room for David Ogden Stiers as Charles Emerson Winchester III. If Frank Burns was the cartoon villain, Winchester was the slow burn. Cultured, brilliant, arrogant, and private, he was more than an antagonist. He was a challenge. To Hawkeye, to BJ, to the tone of the show itself. At first, Winchester seemed pompous and insufferable, but over time, cracks appeared. He wasn't cruel, just guarded. Beneath the layers of opera and wine talk was a man reckoning with the brutal reality of war. Unlike Larry, David stayed with the show until the very end. His final scene, teaching Chinese POWs to play Mozart, remains one of the most hauntingly beautiful moments in television history. Steers himself explained why he didn't join the spin-off after MASH. Winchester had said what he needed to say. After the show, he enjoyed a successful career, including voice work for Disney. In 2009, he publicly came out as gay, saying he had kept it private earlier in his career out of fear of losing roles. He passed away in 2018 at age 75, remembered for his extraordinary range and quiet courage. Of course, MASH wouldn't be complete without recognizing the women of the series. In a war zone full of men cracking jokes to keep the darkness at bay, the women of MASH had a tougher job, being seen. And no woman faced a steeper climb or had a more remarkable transformation than Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan, played by Loretta Swit. When the show began, Margaret was written as the punchline. Her nickname, Hot Lips, said it all. A reference to a gag from the original film. She was strict, by the book, and often ridiculed. But Loretta refused to let Margaret stay one-dimensional. With each season, she infused her with intelligence, strength, and vulnerability. By the end, Margaret was no joke. She was a decorated officer, a skilled head nurse, and one of the few characters to openly question the war's cruelty while still doing her job with precision. Loretta once said, "I wanted her to be a woman of substance." And she was. Margaret evolved into one of the most complex characters on the show. While many male actors left, Loretta stayed for all 11 seasons. One of only 4 actors to appear in both the pilot and the finale. In a series where war stripped everyone down, Margaret stood tall. Thanks to Loretta's persistence, the only woman in the opening credits made sure the boys didn't carry the show alone. So, what actors did we miss? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the one on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss when a new one drops.